Welcome back to Practice Underwater. It's Friday morning. You're most likely driving to work, at the gym. That's when I would listen. Those two places.
I don't think I could listen to anybody talking about dentistry while I'm at the gym, for sure.
I didn't think I could either, but it's wonderful.
If you're running, I'm sorry.
Someone's definitely running to this voice right now. I know it.
Ugh.
I don't know how fast they're running or how well they're doing it, but they're doing it.
Yeah. Get off the treadmill.
All right, so we'll get right into this. This is part 2 with Dr. Sara. She did a startup a year ago, and it's just killing it. And we get into really some cool leadership discussions in this one, and a lot about how this she sees this practice now fitting into her lifestyle. You know, now that she's kind of outgrown that startup phase, that high growth, that do anything to get patients in, stay late, you know, the whole deal. How does this fit in her life, and how does this make, you know, everything she wants in her life possible? So we get into a lot of that stuff on this one. This is part 2 with Dr. Sara. We are back with our guest, Dr. Sara. If you haven't listened to her part 1 of the episode, please go back and listen before you jump into this one. To recap everyone, she was an associate for 4 years. She did a scratch startup in December of 2019, so just coming on a little over a year into her ownership journey. She has done extremely well. Her practice collected $950,000 in the first year. She got over 1,000 patients. She's just kind of bursting at the seams with doctor production, and office is extremely busy. We got in a lot about her marketing and how she took 3 months before she started the practice to basically be a full-time dental marketer, and invested over $80,000 into that, and has really driven the growth that she's seen. She's extremely amazing with the patient experience, and like showing the person a great experience from the first piece of marketing they get to the time they walk into the office. So a lot of good knowledge that she shared in the last episode. Welcome back, Dr. Sara.
Hey, thank you for having me.
So we got to get into it. We got to do the hard stuff now. We're PBN guys here. I want to make that very clear. So I got my claws on, you know, I got all my weapons going. I'm ready to battle it out. Dental Intel versus PBN. So talk to us a little bit about how you use Dental Intel and why you ultimately chose to use them to help your practice.
Well, I guess I'll be clear. I have no allegiance to Dental Intel. But I think at some point where, so about 4 months into our practice, I think we were just, my husband and I were scratching our heads, and we're just like, I don't even know what Open Dental has, because we have Open Dental. It has some reports, but how do you even do this, or how do you pull out this report? And I said, you know, I've heard on various podcasts and Facebook groups about just having something. And actually the DSO that I worked at had something very similar. I think they might have had a version of Dental Intel. So I said, hey, we need to have something like that. So that's how it started. And to be honest with you, he did most of the research, and he said Practice by Numbers was actually the first one he looked at, and he got a demo, and then he just settled on Dental Intel. So I don't know. I think that question might be something I'll ask him later today. So currently what we use Dental Intel for, and again, I'm very honest, I don't really look into it as much because there are some numbers that are very depressing. Sometimes I think I'm like a camel with my head stuck in the sand, but we definitely use the daily huddle number. So that will tell us the prior day's production, collection, today's or the day off production, collection, opportunities where I might have diagnosed some things, or, you know, if hygiene has forgotten to pre-appoint patients for recare. Quick tidbit: for the first 3 months, I don't know what I was doing. Nobody got appointed for recare because I didn't have a hygienist. So that was a little bit of a shock when we found out. So that's actually helped. And then I think my hygienist and I will sit down and look at hygiene numbers just to see what her opportunities for growth are. She's very driven as well. So I didn't realize that, but she's very driven, and she's also enjoying seeing these numbers. She never had that opportunity at the previous place that she was at. So there's that. And then we're now talking, because everyone works really hard. So we're talking about maybe setting up a team bonus structure. Before we used to, if we had a good month, we, just spot bonus them. But I want to make it, again, more team driven strategy.
So you use the morning huddle. Is that like an actual huddle you have with the whole team?
Yes.
Sell me on that a little bit. Like it's not something we've ever done.
So initially we started off as just like reading all these numbers, but dentistry is such a grind, especially when you're seeing however many patients you're seeing, and it just gets really old. So I'll have someone else like kind of go through some of those numbers, but I'm the motivator and the bringer of energy. The reason I believe in a morning huddle is because I think that it's our quiet time to connect with each other. And this is kind of me getting philosophical, but it's our quiet time before the craziness starts. We try to do same day treatments or we try to do squeeze in emergencies. So there's never a quiet moment for all of us to connect. And I think it's helped the back connect with the front. We'll share like a funny story, or Tuesdays give everyone a hug day, so we'll just go in and we'll just give everyone a hug. Or I'll start off with something positive, so I'll say, hey, did you guys realize we crossed 300 reviews? We're getting good at the basics. I mean, we're getting good at presenting treatment plan, collecting money, pre-appointing patients. We're getting good at treatment, we're getting efficient, but I feel like the culture and the soul was lacking a little bit. So personally, I just use my morning huddles as throw in something positive, have someone share something positive. I always think of ways to bring in high energy, even if I don't feel it. Half the times I'm exhausted on a Friday morning, but I'll still act like I have the most energy for those 15 minutes. So that's honestly what I use it for. And I we can see that some people walk in because before I'd be like, hey, how are you? And then someone will be like, well, I was at the ER with my doctor, and then immediately you see the energy dip. So now instead of saying let's have a great day, I'll say, are we ready to have a great day? And then we'll start with that. Or one of the other things that one of my other uh, team members will say, we're not here to be mediocre, and then they'll play, there's a rap song, so they'll play that every morning. So I think it's just a great way to bring energy because our day is going to be crazy enough.
I love that. All right, I'm sold. That was perfect. Uh, I totally need this in my office because, like you said, like one thing could happen at the beginning of the day and just like downward spiral, like just that energy is totally gone. Uh, so I'm sold. Um, I want to touch on one thing you said about looking at numbers because I think this is something that a lot of doctors go through. Like they sign up for dental intel, PBN, or one of these numbers tracking services, and then there are numbers on there they don't like, and they'll look at them once, and then they'll know they're there going forward, and then that's going to prevent them from looking at. Like if they can feel themselves having a slow month or whatever, they'll like be less likely to look at the numbers. So like, how do you see yourself kind of getting over that like depressing feeling of seeing the numbers you're not comfortable with?
Well, I just tell the team about it now. I say, hey, this is, we need X amount to make our collections, but look at what we have in AR. Are we able to find some money there? Or if someone says, hey doc, like this patient's a bad debt, and the other day they came to me and they said, oh, this is $800 that we'll have to write off. And I said, what do we say here? And then she said, well, you're going to ask me to look for $1,600. And I was like, exactly. So I try not to get mad at them for things that have been mistakes that have been made by everyone involved. And I was just like, you already know the answers, so come to me with when you collected $1,600 some from or found $1,600 somewhere else. Um, but yeah, that's what I'm trying to have is a more optimistic outlook. I think our AR numbers, if I were to look at them, they're probably a month's collections or a month's production, whichever's higher. I think they're a month's production. So not great. Obviously, we've been blessed enough to have enough, not have cash flow issues, and we're working on it. But as I said, like last year, if you ask me, I'd just say, don't even show me these because I have to be on my drive and I can't be the one with the lowest energy. But I think over the last few months and then this year, my outlook is just take one thing at a time. So if there's one thing I can chip away, so I'll ask my insurance guys, I'll say, hey, where are we at with these claims? Or, our collection policy is getting a lot tighter. So a lot of those old AR has to be cleaned up. But a lot of those were in the very beginning where we were really hungry for patients and hungry for treatment.
Yeah. I really loved like two things you said there is like for one, involving the team in it. Like you'll feel so much more like shame and guilt and whatever emotions come up looking at your numbers if it's just you. It's like all on you. When in reality it's not that's not what's happening. You have a whole team around you who want the office to succeed. So just like involving them in the wins and the things that aren't going well, and like making it less so like you're on an island, I think is a great way to look at it. And also like how you're looking at these things as opportunities, they're not problems. Like you got 800 in bad AR, that's an opportunity for us to collect double that. Like these aren't things that are wrong. These are just like growth areas.
Yeah.
Like it's all mindset. It's all how you look at it. It's nothing's wrong. Nothing's a problem. It's all made up in your head. It's all interpretations.
It took me about 10 months to figure it out, though, to have that mindset change. And then my assistant, who's been with me the longest, she said, "Oh, you don't have your ugly faces anymore." She means like my mean faces. She's like, you don't show them anymore." And I was just like, "Yeah, because I think I'd like to say I've changed. I still show them to my husband, but
that's fine. You let the guard down. You get them home. Get the ranting out.
Yeah.
And you got your leader face on there. I have the alternative problem. I'm like extremely stone faced and like don't show them even in the good times, which is the bad thing for me. Like things are going well, I'm still gonna look the same.
Yeah.
I'm a Bill Belichick fan, so like I modeled it after him in his stone face.
But you can have those conversations with your team where they know that it's a safe space because Dr. Matt's not going to be angry. Meanwhile, I'm just like fuming. And I was just like, "Why didn't you do this?"
I do the same thing with you. My wife hears about it. I was ranting about our hygienist just about an hour ago. So, I mean, it comes out eventually. It doesn't just stay in there. All right. So we got your December numbers up. December I have, and it could be a little off, that you collected around 85,000. You did about 140 in adjusted production. Looking back from a couple months, that's not like a normal thing where you do that much more production than collections. You did touch on a little bit. You have a bit of an AR issue that you already know about. Have you found that? Have you looked to outsource that to someone, or do you task your front with like reeling that in a little bit, aside from just the changing collection policy?
So insurance AR, I have Insurance Answers Plus that I think they're based here in the US. So they help. They've assigned a person to our account, so they keep tabs on that, so we know that we're not running behind. Because sometimes even we're so busy, the girls in the front don't even have time to send out claims that day. So she'll go in and every other day and send out those and make sure we're not running behind. So we've been sending out statements. So I think one of the girls that I have, her daily goal is to create and send out 5 statements. We'll talk. So we'll have a meeting every Friday, and then we'll decide which ones to write off and then which ones to bill out for. So we're doing that little by little. I think some money's come in, and then over the last 3 or 4 months, we've just been really good at collecting money and for pre-appointment and then for appointments on doctor or hygiene schedule. So I hope to see that improve within the next 3 months or so.
Yeah, this doesn't sound like it's something that's going to continue much longer, and it seems like you'll be in a much solid, like you said, in a couple months. I feel like you're being in a much more solid place. So I want to get to a big praise area for you, diagnosis. Like you just crush diagnosis and treatment planning. Like in this month, you treatment planned 409,000. That's about the highest I've ever seen. Ton of ortho. Like where are you finding all this ortho?
Well, so I'll say that a lot of our patients are limited in emergencies. So those are already like a very easy extraction bone graft or root canal build up crown if that's something that I can do. So that's already like a high dollar number, even if it's just an extraction. It's super easy. With respect to orthodontics, I got over my limiting belief a little bit. So we got the iTero in September or October, and we weren't really scanning every new patient and doing the healthy tooth scan on even some of our recalls. And then at some point I said, "Hey, we have this lying here. Let's just do it on every patient." And I just didn't believe how many patients, after seeing their before afters with the Invisalign simulator, said, "I want to do it. I want to do it." And then we had to refine our treatment presentation a little bit because these are traditionally like higher dollar procedures. So then we had to give them some options and make it worthwhile for them. So I almost, and then Invisalign's a little bit of a cult, and I know everyone has their love hate with them and Smile Direct Club, but um, I think they put out a stat saying about 70 something percent of Americans have some malocclusion. And I think those numbers are true. And I always, when I present it to them, it's like like you can't call someone's child ugly. You can't call someone's teeth misaligned or crooked. So I say, and I think this has been the game changer, where I say, hey, as your dentist, of course I want you to have a pretty smile, but what's more important to me is the health of your teeth. So this is why your teeth are colliding, chipping, all the Invisalign stuff that they tell you. And I always go at it from a health perspective. And I said, and then while we do all of this, the byproduct is going to be that you're going to have a happier, brighter smile. And I think, and then I said, what do you think about it? And they'll be like, yeah, I need it. I feel the pressure on my teeth. And by the way, doc, that one canine's always bothered me. So I give them a safe space to have that conversation. And I'm very proud that our oldest lady in Invisalign, our oldest patient in Invisalign is 69-year-old lady. So
Wow.
she said, I took care of all my family. I put everyone through braces. Now it's my turn. So
Yeah.
just, you know, so one of the reasons why we did well in December is because from September I've been training everyone, and in December we had 10 case starts, or 10 cases that were accepted. So that immediately is, you know, very little to do with me because my hygienist knows exactly what to say. My two assistants know exactly what to say. So they have it ready. They're already having the conversation with the patient. One of the things we got really good at is, I hate to say it, but we're very, very targeted too. In the morning huddle, we'll already know who has ortho benefits. So if someone needs to, I was like, so definitely the patients who have ortho benefits have to be scanned no matter what.
Hmm.
Or so they'll put O on the, on our printouts from the schedule if they have ortho benefits, or they'll put I for implant, or sometimes they'll put both. So I said, our practice in 2020 is going to be an implant and Invisalign practice. So that's what I tell them. And I can see the team getting super excited. Like I can see, like, when there's someone who even exhibits a slight interest in Invisalign, I hear it all the way in my op. Like everyone's talking about it. We have Slack, which is our in office like messenger. Like it's already on there. so
That's
uh,
awesome.
so now we're closing about 2 to 3 cases a week in January, or have been.
See, I love how you're arming the team with the knowledge of the insurance. Like that is so important. Like that's going to really, like your hygienist will be more willing to present it if they know they're going to get some coverage, like ortho implants, occlusal guards, like stuff like that.
Yeah,
That's kind of more elective, quote unquote.
yeah.
Like they'll sell it a lot
Yeah,
more effectively.
I mean, and I think I often hear these, oh, what should I pay my hygienist type of thing. So I think if we're just looking at numbers, and that was one of the things that we told ourselves when we brought our hygienist on, is if I just look at the numbers, it's a loss leader. But if I look at the potential of co-diagnosis, if I look at what having a hygienist can add to our team, we're always going to come out front. So her bonus is tied into team bonuses. So she doesn't have to overdiagnose on perio. And I hate for that to happen. So I think that she feels very connected to the team because she's now, diagnosing Invisalign. She's telling them about the wear on their teeth. And I say, hey, I can, crown everything, but guess what? It's going to fail. So, it's better to get these teeth in the right position. And then we can, um, and then we can talk about all your cosmetic needs. And I will say this though, not to toot my own horn again, but the reason it took me so long to get on board with Invisalign is because I took a lot of intensive coaching and training. So um, I feel confident that I'll be able to, plan every case, and I plan all the clin checks myself. And I think, again, I didn't realize how impactful that was because they see me go through 3 or 4 revisions. When I heard my assistant tell the patient, hey, Dr. Patel plans each and every attachment. Like each button has a meaning before it goes on your tooth. And I've seen her do it herself. And I was just like, that's great. We're going to tell her to say it every single time, because the patient had a consult at another chain dental office, and then we were her second, so she already knew how much it cost, and actually we charged her more, but I think that made a difference to her. because she heard it from my assistant that I have personal control over each case and I plan it individually.
That's awesome. I mean, this is really tough for me. I'm a voiced Invisalign hater. Like iTero, Invisalign. Don't get me rolling on that. So this is personally really tough for me to hear. I can't argue with the results. Like, there's nothing I can say. Like, you're doing awesome with it.
And and same thing, right? Because I took 6 month smiles, CE, but I actually see, because we're about to jump a crossbite on a patient and it's working, and I was just like, this is incredible. I shouldn't be afraid anymore, because a lot of it is just preparation, and if you know the science, then I think, and that's how I am. I wouldn't start implants until I was absolutely sure I could deal with every complication. So same thing. I just liked it, and that's, I think, how dental school prepared us. They trained us, so well that we would be afraid to try something that we've never tried because they put the fear of God in us for some reason. So, so again, whether it's any other company, or I think it can add a great, and for the restorative dentist too, because I have a case of veneers that I told the girl I'll give her half off if she does Invisalign, because that's how strongly I believed in Invisalign, and then she's doing it now. So
nice.
It's a great arsenal to have in your tool, and it's going towards my goal of team driven production. So
yeah, and I love, like, most docs will present it as like the benefits of looking good, aesthetics, straight teeth, and you went the other route. You went, this is about the health of your teeth, while also you get that added benefit. And I don't think that's how most people present it. And like, it sounds like that's a much more effective way of them saying yes to it.
And, of course, that's the elephant in the room. Of course, they're going to get it for that reason. And I've seen them like sell it to their spouses, because their spouses are like, oh, you're so vain for getting it because you're in your 30s or you're married, so you don't have to look good for anyone. But people want to look good for themselves. And they've said, but you said it was for my bite, right? That's what I'm going to tell my husband. And then I had like someone bring in their husband, and I said, look, this is what you're looking at. And then he's like, oh, okay. I didn't believe her. But now, and I was like, yeah. And then she just gave me the biggest hug after, because we were both in on it.
Nice. That's awesome. My only piece with your diagnosis, which is all super solid, your average treatment plan size this month, over 3,400. A lot to do with Invisalign, but a lot to do with other procedures as well. You do a lot of fillings every month, like way more fillings than crowns. Usually like around 8-1, where we want to see people like 3-1. So like, what's going on in that realm?
Yeah, I wonder. I feel like we were doing maybe 20 units a month, 20 crowns a month, sometimes more, sometimes less. It might be that sometimes I've seen them do like one at a time. I was very conservative in the first 6 months, just because I don't even know what the word conservative means anymore, but just because I had a lot of emergency patients, so sometimes I'd put watches on things. Part of it was, maybe I thought patients wouldn't trust me if I gave them a $6,000 treatment plan. So a lot of it was me. Now I think I heard it from maybe you, Matt, or someone on the podcast, where I think someone said, hey, it's my like, morally and ethically I have to tell you what's going on, and it might take weeks, months, or years to do it, but I have to tell you what's going on. So now I'm doing a little bit more of that over the last few months as well. Or maybe that my team isn't afraid to see these high dollar procedures, because actually for a while there, I wasn't confident in someone in the front closing the case, because we had closing, or sort of selling. I know doctors hate to use the word sell, but
I love the word selling.
I love it too. So I keep telling the team, sell me some Invisalign today. But
selling is one of my favorite things. It's the best part of dentistry. I get to sell every hour. That is so cool.
Yeah, it's exhausting, but it's fun. So so now I have two girls that are both solid, at least in presenting treatment plans. They might be lacking in other avenues, but I feel confident. And sometimes I literally just plan. I feel like I'm setting them up for failure, and they come out and they're like, "Oh yeah, the patient signed. They paid $6,000 in care credits." So I was like, "Okay." So it's part of it is getting over limiting beliefs too. But yeah, maybe I should look into my crown to filling ratio, or evaluate.
Yeah, it shows like how limiting we can be for ourselves, and how much we can get in our way when we make assumptions about whether this person is going to do it or not. Whereas if we just like let them be a choice for their own health and their own mouth, like we might get surprised, and it happens.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think now as I've gone through, now that we have reviews, I think now that, or maybe I just feel more comfortable in where my practice is poised, to where now I don't really have problems presenting things to people, to patients.
You're listening to Practice Underwater on the Shared Praxis podcast.
Before we get back to the episode, I wanted to take a minute and thank Practice by Numbers. Without their help and allowing us to set up the Shared Practices dashboard, a lot of what we do on Practice Underwater wouldn't be possible. I want to take a minute and highlight a clip from the episode that we did with Rohit, where we highlighted some of the metrics that really matter most.
One of my pet peeves that I want to share is that when you talk to some of the providers that are really successful out there, that have been in practice for 20, 30 years, and they roll your eyes when you say you're going to manage by numbers and this and that, they have successful practices, they have built them, and there has something right they have done. And when they tell you the only thing you need to look at is your bank account, it's absolutely incorrect. Okay? It pisses me off every time I look at that and I see that comment on the Facebook group, because success is not happenstance. It just doesn't happen.
It's kind of baffling. It's an everyday kind of thing where you're striving to improve, you're striving to tighten your systems, you're striving to know your practice better, and just to get in that kind of complacent mode is easy. I can see how it happens, because you're so in the wheel and you get overwhelmed with things that this isn't something you want to think about a lot of times. But it really is so important that people focus on this kind of thing.
I hope you guys enjoyed that clip. If you guys are interested in trying out Practice by Numbers and looking at your practice through the Shared Practices dashboard, and there are many other dashboards, you can go to practicebynumbers.com and set up a free trial.
Let's jump to hygiene. So your hygienist hourly production is extremely high. Is that due to, are you doing 30-minute hygienes? Like, how was she able to produce so much in an hour? She's at about 323 this month.
Well, for new patients, we do an hour and a half. So that's in part because she's great at doing same day starts for SRP. I never realized, but she's a great seller. So we started selling Sonic Airs, and she said, "Doc," I was like, "Hey, I don't want to worry about like keeping inventory, cash flow." I always try to show them that I'm the poorest person on the earth, but which is true. We have a lot of stuff to spend on. I said, "I don't know about this." So she said, "Okay, let's order like 20 and give me a month." So we ordered 20 in December. Within the first week, those were gone. So those go under her, like Sonic Airs will go under her. So she's really setting us up for our hygiene program. So now she'll do adjuncts like fluoride or irrigation, or if we're doing a gingivitis cleaning, she'll do some irrigation too. So we're really good about that, but she's also good about same day treatment. And the area that we're in, although a big metro city, we're surprised that I had a patient today literally tell me this was his first time ever that he's been at a dentist, and he's 40 something. So wow. He does need SRP. So the demand for periotherapies is pretty high. Plus, she's on assisted hygiene, so she'll see a recall in between two new patients. I'm really proud of her. She gets the job done. She sees all of us work hard, and she works really, really hard as well.
Yeah, I mean, she's producing like a beast. She's at 2,000 a day, 320 an hour. Like she's really a cash cow for you. Not even including all the doctor production that she's setting up.
Yeah.
I want you to look into a name, Aquasonic toothbrush on Amazon, $35. Okay. Performs as good or better than Sonicare. Comes with 10 tips. It's amazing. I use it every night. I recommend it to everyone, and it could be one way to like cut down on your cost for it. Just a thought.
Yeah, no, I'd love to look at that.
Okay, so I mean, I don't have much with hygiene. She's pre-appointing. She's really producing. She's doing a good amount of perio. 26 last month, 26%. So like, she's really doing great. I got no comments there. The one area which we touched on a little bit is the recall current percentage, which is low. It's at 57%. And I know you have now started to task a team member with calling 20 patients a day and doing that. So how do you see that number improving?
Just having dedicated time for our hygiene scheduler to make recalls. We've also, so I think I heard her. So I said, "Hey, call 20 people." So she'll do it. And then I said, "Hey, so you just came up on my recall list and you're due for a recall." And I was just like, "Oh no, what are you saying? So then I had the hygienist, myself, and her sit down together and said, hey, what's some verbiage we can use when you call these 20 recalls? Or when you make these 20 calls. So then the hygienist, I said, by the end of the week, both of you are going to come together and decide, because our hygienist is great at like she has no problem. She'll call patients too. She'll hold them accountable. So I said, hey, can we come up with verbiage that you can use to get these people in the door? So they've been working on that last month and this, but because we're so good at accommodating our patients, sometimes I hear the calls and she's like, oh, well, my appointment was for this afternoon, but I can't make it. What do you have available? And then I know that they're trying to salvage the situation, saying, hey, we can push you down a little bit. But then sure enough, like my scheduler is going to find some time for a hygienist to see the patient within a couple of days, because that's what I've told them to do. And I try not to sort of punish our patients, but I feel like patients feel like appointments are just very easily available, which we want to make it the case for new patients, but maybe we're not holding our patients accountable to our time. And that's the challenge. So then we've kind of gone back and forth. I was like, should we take deposits for recalls? How does that work? So that's an area we continue to struggle with, because everyone's tired when they're seeing a new patient, because everyone has to be on their best behavior. Someone has to, a lot of legwork has to be put in to see a new patient. And then again, to have our second hygienist, some recalls if we're adding in so many patients, we have to be able to see recalls to make it.
Yeah, because I'm seeing a good amount of failed appointments on a given month.
Yes.
Are you mainly seeing that for like recare patients, people you scheduled 6 months ago that are switching or canceling?
Pretty much that. The dentist side, like the doctor side, failed appointments are minimal because we're really good now at collecting money beforehand. So I think those have dropped, and sometimes I think some of the girls are like, oh yeah, it doesn't matter, we'll work in something else and we'll still make it to goal every day. So it's pretty much the recares that are falling through. Sometimes obviously new patients also have they've never met us before, so we're working on some videos to send them, or a video to send them to welcome them for their first visit, to maybe drop our new patient no-shows, but it's keeping our recalls accountable. That's been challenging.
Okay. And I want to point to another thing you're doing super well, your same day stuff. We talked about it. This month in December, you did like half of your production as same day treatment, which is incredible. $75,000 in production that wasn't on the schedule that you brought in and your team brought in is so dynamite. So like, how have you how do you find time for all this? How does your staff are able to treat the same day where you're doing so much?
So one of the advantages is having more operatories, so that we'll be we're literally known as the emergency dentist. So I feel like in our practice we have two practices. We have an emergency sort of a clinic. I don't want to call it a clinic, but we have an emergency clinic, and then we have this comprehensive family dentistry. And for us to grow now and then also see future growth, we need both those systems and both those practices to work. And that's how I explained it to the team. I said, hey, for our daily goal, the emergencies or the same day starts are going to help. But for the future, to make sure that we always have patients, we need our recare to work. So we're really good. So the girls will tell emergencies, hey, we'll see you today, but I'm not sure if Dr. Sara can do the treatment. But if you have time today, would that be an option for you? So we already know coming in if it's something that I can do. We'll do it. And then just letting them know. I make accommodations for all my patients. So I think most of them are grateful that we're seeing them. So sometimes I'll tell emergency patients, like, I have, 2 other procedures to finish before I can come and do your treatment, but I will. And then they're like, okay, doc. So they'll hang out and watch Netflix. And my pre-appointed patients, and I don't want to do that because it's very important to me to run on time, but I'll say, hey, I'm sure we've accommodated, or we will in the future, you or a family member. So I have something that I really need to do, and then I'll be right with you. So just being very honest. And
being honest and like being willing to work hard and go above and beyond, and more so the staff than you. Like, it's natural for a doctor who, wants to do more, wants to see more patients, but for a staff member to be okay with that and encourage it is pretty rare.
yeah, and I think it started with my assistant, because I used to do same day treatment only with one assistant. I was like, well, if I have the isolate, I can do whatever I need to. You go, you know, check on that limited really quick for me. So I think we always laid the ground rule, like it wasn't an option. So I think that's really helped. I heard someone say that even, I think they're an established office, but even 10 years in, same day treatment accounts for 30% of their production, which is really, really significant. And we're a startup. So I think that's when it really hit home, where we need to figure out a way. And of course, we've had the iteros. So now if someone wants to do a night guard really quick, we'll scan them and we'll do it that day. And it's easy production. Or, if you want to do an Invisalign start, we're ready for it. And it was also kind of setting up our infrastructure. So I have enough stuff. Like I have enough equipments and like instruments and stuff like that. I have multiples of everything. So we can, I always tell my assistants, hey, what do you think is the bottleneck? Because I don't want y'all to have to run this instrument in the middle of the day and now we have a patient. So if you want me to have 20 restorative cassettes, I will, because I don't want that to hold you. So we only have 2.5 assistants, but they work really hard. And I think that they like having to not run the sterilization several times a day. So, and we continue to add stuff to what we need.
Yeah, that I love how you put that. Like, eliminate the barriers to doing this. Whatever the bottleneck is, if it's instruments, if it's staff members, if it's like capacity.
Yeah.
Like making all those issues go away. So it's literally just the patient choosing, do they want to do it now or come back? And like, I'm the biggest same day guy there is. Breakaway indoctrinated me when I went there, and I offer it all the time, anytime I can. I think I feel so strongly that it's so important to really harp on, and I love how you're doing it. I don't have much more with your numbers. I think they're all in really solid places. I just want to talk more before we wrap up here, and as far as like just reiterating where you see yourself going in 2020, because I know from my end, I see you having another hygienist. I see you having an associate both in this year. I really think that's possible for you. Your systems are so strong. Your patient acquisition is so strong. Your team, is functioning well. So like, there's no holds bar for you. That's what I'm seeing.
Are you sure, Matt? I feel like every other day, I feel like we're doing horribly, and I feel like it's all going to stop.
It's tough because like when you're in it, you're there in the trenches. It's tough to get that elevation and really, like, you do the gratitude every morning, which is awesome. But it's tough to get that elevation and really appreciate like what you've built in such a short amount of time and the trajectory you're on. Like you've hit so many key parts of a dental practice, and you've hit them like so well that like there isn't much wrong with this. Like you're on such a great path. That's what I'm seeing.
Okay. Yeah. I think, and then also on this podcast, I think at some point I heard George say, or he was sort of advising another dentist, that he said, the point is not to have lunch today. It's to have lunch, in a year or 2 years or 3 years. So I think now that we're out of survival mode, because that's what that first year was, that really hit home, because the point is that now, we're not a startup anymore. We're a mature dental practice, or we want to be, or we should view ourselves as being. So then I want to set up systems and adequate hygiene for the years to come. And we continue to sort of work on it, because I think for a good 2-3 months we said, well, so-and-so is not calling enough patients, and this one's not doing enough. And then we actually sat and heard, we have Mango Voice, so then we heard the calls, and these patients are very actively trying to be very squirrely and run away from us. So we're, and then I think my husband said, I think we're just being insane, because we're just telling her to call 20 people. And that's the definition of insanity, just doing the same thing and expecting different results. So we're trying to sort of switch it up and try different things. And that's worked, because any idea that we have, we vet it, and then we don't take too long to implement. And sometimes we'll see instant results. So I think that's been a key to why we've been knock on wood, very successful is because we're not afraid to try different things, which as a startup, it's almost natural because you're able to, but it's harder, I think, in some established practices to change the tide.
Definitely. And like, I see this year and the years to come as like getting to that sustainable model, whatever that looks for you and however that fits in your life is like where you guys are headed. Like you said, you're not a startup anymore. Like you are an established practice with a healthy patient base and a healthy production. And if you want to take a lunch, you can. Like you don't need to be doing that on fire anymore.
Yeah.
You're at a stable place.
Yeah.
And this is really good that you came on because we had a startup. I don't know if you heard this episode. We had a pretty failing startup a few months ago, and we haven't gotten more emails about a podcast than that one. That really scared people. So I'm happy we have a startup on here who's actually succeeding, so people can hear that it's not all doom and gloom in the startup world. Like there are people who are killing it.
And one thing I heard that podcast, and one thing I showed my husband, I was like, "Hey, he has like a very sick like Facebook, like a video on Facebook introducing everyone to his practice," and we still don't have that because that's how kind of caught up we got. So now we're getting photo and video into our office. But hey, you know what? 1,000 people have seen it already, so which is
Nice.
which is amazing. So, yeah, I mean. I would say, I often pose this question to my husband. I said, do you think it was the demographics that worked for us? Because even though we're in a metro city area, ours are about 3,000 to 1. So they're a little over the 2,000, which is the very bare minimum. And I think because my husband does our SEO and our Google, well, the SEO guy also, he actually got one, and we've jumped rankings. So that's been really nice. We're now ranked number 3. We were at 17 last year.
Nice.
But I think he said I think it kind of boils down to if you don't have money to put on Google AdWords, then you're already losing the game. So to all those people I think who are doing a startup, I think you only have like one opportunity to succeed, but a lot of ways that you can fail. So, just leave enough money for marketing. Even, I hear this all the time. Well, I can't drive out 2 hours. So, okay, if you're having it in a less desirable, like population and dentist ratio, then you have to go on a marketing blitz and you'll still be okay. So I think the conclusion that we both came to is, of course, we have this great location, but let's say we were in another area, I think we would have been okay. Probably we wouldn't have seen this explosive growth, but we would have been okay if we had enough money to market. And the problem that I see other people do is they don't set themselves up for success. They don't get the right location. But what's worse is they don't have any money because they've overspent and they've spent it all. And that's really challenging. And I know for a lot of people in the industry, it's crazy to spend $12,000 a month on marketing. But hey, the numbers speak for themselves.
Absolutely. And like I had a residency instructor tell me like the cream rises to the crop no matter where it is. And I think, like you said, you'd be successful wherever you are because of who you are and the work you put into this and the knowledge you had and how you went for it. So, I don't think it is one thing. I think it's a combination of things, but at the end of the day, it all comes back to you. So Dr. Sara, thank you for being on. Like it was such a pleasure. I learned a lot. I took a bunch of notes, so I got some like to-do items for myself now. It's a little reverse podcast here. So I got the morning huddle going. I got the insurance stuff. So I got some to-dos for myself. So thank you for that. And thank you for sharing your story. Like it's so impressive what you built. And, I hope you stay in touch so I can see how you guys grow for 2020.
Well, I've made myself accountable now because I said we're wanting to grow 50%. So I have to push hard and get that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Awesome. Well, thank you, Dr. Sara, again for being on, and we'll see you guys next week on Practice Underwater.
Thank you.
All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed part 2 with Sara. I am back with George. George, we wanted to have a bit of discussion on morning huddles because it's kind of either like you love them or you hate them kind of thing in dentistry. Some people really see the value. This doc definitely does. She uses it as a place to build a lot of enthusiasm in her team and to set intentions, set goals, and really rallies everyone around that and kind of starts their day on a bang because once they get going, as she described, they don't stop throughout the day. They're just slammed. So let the listeners know, do you use a morning huddle? Like, what are your thoughts on them?
So my thoughts on morning huddles are that they're extremely valuable when done properly, and they can add a lot of same-day dentistry to a day. I think that's like the biggest thing you can get from a morning huddle is same-day dentistry opportunities, where to put them. Like this patient hygiene needs this doctor has an opening at this time, like that's when you can do it. All that being said, never have I ever done a morning huddle.
Blasphemy.
No.
Reason?
Real reason?
Yeah.
Laziness. Totally honest. Yeah, no, I like to come into the office as late as possible. My patient's usually already seated, sometimes numb. So that's when I want to walk in. I don't want to come in early for the purpose of having a 15-minute meeting with my staff.
I totally agree, actually. And my reason's the same.
Yeah, like it just, like, I mean, not saying I don't care, but like, I try to communicate everything that most people can, like, what do most people talk about in a morning huddle? Who's coming? What are we doing? Like, just how do we make the day flow smoothly? Right? That's a total, I mean, I don't want to say total waste of time. That's kind of rude to like, that's like an hour a week that offices are spending doing that. But yeah, I just, it's not necessary in my mind. We communicate all that stuff through routing slips. I think the one thing that we just are unable to really do well through routing slips is same-day dentistry opportunities. And I am making the decision to not have as profitable a practice or as high-performing a practice and no huddle than to do it with a huddle. And yeah, I mean, like my staff, we all start at different times too. Like we have hygiene starting earlier. We have our front desk and our hygiene get there. Like let's just say like a Wednesday or Thursday, they get there at 6:45, and then I'm not walking into the office until 7:30, sometimes 8. So I don't want to be.
Yeah, here early. I mean, that's the same as my hygiene always starts an hour before I do. I see their patient, 45 minutes into their appointment. I get there 15 minutes before my first patient. So that whole like, when
so you'd have to get there 1 hour sooner to have a huddle. Yeah,
exactly. So like, I like kind of like a mini huddle with like just the manager at the front, or like in my front desk person as well, and just like a little huddle with the 2 assistants. Just kind of like going over the schedule quickly, but like nothing formal, nothing, how this doc is using it.
Yeah. So I actually we had no meetings either. So my practice was no huddles. We were a huddleless offense, I like to call us. No huddle offense.
Yeah.
And we had no meetings either. My way I was making announcements was I put a Post-it note with whatever I had to say, and I'd walk around with it on my finger to all my team members, tell them what I need to say, and I'd throw it away. And that was a very ineffective way of leading a team. So we have since switched to a monthly meeting, and that is about all I can tolerate. So
that's such a funny image of you walking around with a Post-it note on his finger.
That is real life. You can ask my team members. I've done that probably like 20 times. But then, like my team, as we get larger, we're not always there at the same times. Like there's pretty much a day of the week where we're missing a hygienist. So yeah, for sure. Yeah, we need meetings monthly.
Yeah. And touch into too about how like this practice is fitting in her life. Like I mentioned before, she's getting out of this high growth phase a little bit, but like she there's no denying she's working like crazy. Like she's there 6 days. She's there some late nights. She works through lunch. She'll fit in a patient wherever. Like, is that sustainable?
No. I mean, it depends on the person, right? But I think for the majority of people, probably not. I think for me, like, right, like we all have our own tolerance for this stuff. Like I think 4 days a week for me is unsustainable. Right, but 4 days a week for somebody else might be like, oh, that's a super nice schedule. I love 4 days a week. Just Monday to Thursday. Wow, that's awesome. For me, that's not. And so for her, she's 5.5 days. That's up there. I think it's hard to find somebody who works more than 5.5 days a week. That's I'm a dentist, right? Like I think a lot of people work more than that, but a dentist that works more than 5.5 days a week is tough.
And I really liked a lot of the shortcomings she had as a leader. She kind of self-diagnosed as the year went. She was definitely a little bit demanding of her staff early on. She lost a lot of staff from that, a lot of turnover. But she self-checked that, and she, improved in those areas, which is something I really admired, that she was able to make that distinction, because it's tough when you're just by yourself.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of times I think the hard part is just confronting that, right? Like not blaming each person that left for another reason. I think that's the thing we see a lot is like, well, that person sucks. So they, that's why I'm not a bad leader. And I think it's to really have the ability to like confront the thing that you're trying to avoid is the impressive part about that for sure.
Yeah. And thinking about like my favorite guests who I've interviewed on here, they're all very humble. They're all very vulnerable. And like she was both of those things. And I think that also makes a good leader, like both of those qualities. And I think that's, something that's correlated in that way. Any other thoughts you have for Dr. Sara here?
Not necessarily for Dr. Sara, but kind of what you just said, right? Like, I think I think it's easy for people to, and not easy, but like I'm that type of person that I'm always able to look at the things I don't do well and improve and like look at myself critically. I think the level of growth, like the level above that, right? Like she's there, and being able to also recognize and acknowledge publicly the things that you're good at. That for me has been an area of growth where it's like I can get up here and say like my leadership is one of my strongest attributes. Like
I have one higher than that.
Go for it.
Rewarding yourself for when you hit some of these milestones or do something that you feel is personally great.
No, I agree. I think feeling the proudness is something that I've been doing more and more ever since I've met you, for sure. Especially lately. It's just like really reflecting on accomplishments and, the traits about myself that I'm really proud of. I think that feeling of pride, I almost associate with the reward. Would you say they're the same thing?
They're definitely similar, yeah.
Yeah, but I think just like, so you start with the humility, right? And the being vulnerable. And then you move to essentially just once you're there and you can like improve and grow, then I also think it's very important to recognize, not just for like self-esteem reasons, but for like, she needs to understand how good she is at diagnosis, right? Like she needs to like go, I'm great at diagnosing as a dentist.
Yeah, it's that acknowledgement piece.
Yeah,
it's
and
like,
that's a layer to your leadership, because then you can help the future dentist be, a great diagnoser as well.
Right, the associate she brings on, you're saying.
Yeah, so you're saying that's the acknowledgement piece?
Yeah, it's like acknowledging yourself for what you accomplished or what you were in that moment, or, just all the things you're proud of. Just kind of, what would that be? Like a gratitude list is one way to do it. Like,
absolutely. Yeah.
Building that appreciation.
For sure. And I think that's, something that if I were to give her any advice about leadership at all, it would be, as she continues to be critical and grow, to also recognize the areas where she's very strong and to really own that as part of her identity. Yeah,
because actually just thinking back to her initial email was very, I don't want to say self-deprecating, but it was very like understating what she's built. Like, we're an okay practice, but I really want to be great. And like for 1 year in a startup, they are great.
Yeah.
So like
owning that.
Owning it.
Yeah. And I think that's a really hard thing to do, right? It's hard to ride that line between owning what you do really well and also still striving for more. I know I struggle with that, but that's something that like I'm actively working on.
Yeah. Definitely a fine line dance there.
Because they're both very necessary.
All right. I enjoyed that discussion there, George. Thank you.
Good. And I'm glad we got to have no added value about morning huddles. So I think that for me, objective accomplished.
We're going to get someone on here that's going to...
Like a morning huddle expert. Yeah. You need to, the tone of your voice in the morning huddle has to be this.
Yes. And I've grown this practice 30%. And the only thing we changed was morning huddles.
And it's funny because like we were joking about it, but it is a very effective thing to do.
As he rolls his eyes.
Totally rolling my eyes. Yes, it is effective. I'm not doubting that at all. It's just, I don't want to do it at all. 100% no.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Next week, we'll hear about my morning huddles.
I just hired a new office manager. He's trying to design morning huddles. So I'm open to it, but I'm also very skeptical of it.
All right, guys. Well, we'll see you next week on Practice Underwater. Thanks for listening to another episode of Practice Underwater. We'll see you guys next week.
If you're interested in one-on-one coaching with either Dr. George Hariri or Dr. Matt Garino, our contact emails are in the show notes.
And if you're interested in being on Practice Underwater as a guest, where we could look at your practice anonymously, you can go ahead and contact the email in the show notes and follow those directions to get on the show. Thanks, and we'll see you guys next week on Practice Underwater.